Right, today I'm going to show you how to do a physics simulation, and what we're going to do is a load of cubes bouncing up and down on a landscape, and it's also going to be a bit of an intro to one of the methods that I use to model landscapes. So the first thing we're going to do, we'll take the default scene. We've moved the cube up because we're actually going to use the cube in a minute, and I'm going to put in the landscape. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a plane, bring it somewhere down near the middle of the scene, go into edit mode. First of all, I'm going to scale it up, scale it a bit, and I'm scaling in edit mode. And one of the things you'll notice is if you scale in edit mode, the object scale stays as 1, because what you're doing really is you're moving the vertices. So now I'm going to subdivide it, and I'm going to subdivide it quite a lot. There, that is quite a lot. Okay, and view top, and I'm going to scale it up even more, maybe. There we go. Now we're going to go back to object mode, and I'm going to use a modifier on that. What was a plane and is now a landscape. Actually, let's rename it. There we go. And the modifier I'm going to use is a displace modifier, and this lets me apply a texture to it to create some interesting patterns. Now if I hit new, you can see there that the texture's applied, and we can control the strength of it. As you can see, we can go up and down, and we can do all sorts of things. But what I want to do, the texture here is just called texture, so I want to look at that, and it's not going to be clouds that I'm going to use. It's going to be Voronoi, which is this one. I'm going to take the size up, and you can see already what effect that has. Something like that, just that gives us an interesting pattern all over. That is absolutely fine. So now I can come here and I can apply that, and that's what we've got at the moment as a landscape. Now that for me hasn't got enough lumps and bumps in it, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to sculpt mode, and in sculpt mode there's this nice little thing here. We're going to have clay strips, which allows us to add, basically allows us to add some lumps and bumps, especially around the edges. And what this is going to do is it's going to make the whole thing a lot more realistic, because, and I might reapply that a texture later just to make it even more of a realistic landscape service. But what we're going to have is we're going to have things reacting to this uneven ground, which is what we want. So now what I'm going to do is come back to object mode, add modifier, displace again, texture. Might as well use the same one, but this time I'm going to go in and change it, and it's going to be back to clouds. And the size, I managed to still go up a bit. There we go. And go back. I'm going to turn the strength down a little. there. Something like that. That looks good. I'm going to apply that. And now we'll put a material in for it. I like to put in materials as I go. I'm going to use Blender Internal Render because it's a lot easier for people who are just starting out. Click on New. I'm going to make it look quite ground-like in the... I'm going to turn the specular intensity down because mud very often doesn't actually have much of an intensity. So that's that. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add a texture. New. Now I have an image texture that I often use for things like this. Where are we? Mud. That's the one. And it kind of looks like that. Now what I want to do, I don't want it to influence the colour very much. I'm going to turn that down to about 0.3ish. I'm going to make it give it bumps, so it's going to be an even more complicated ground. Let's have a look through the camera, and we'll change the light. We'll make the light a sun light, and if I now render that, you'll see what the ground is going to look like at the moment. At the moment the ground looks like that. Render, show, hide, and I don't quite like that so much, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put another texture in on top of this texture here. New texture. I'm going to keep it as clouds. And I'm going to turn the size up, maybe not quite so high as it was before. It's going to affect the colour, and I'm going to make it a darkish brown, almost black, like so. Turn down the effect of it. And you can see what we've got here is we've got this subtle darkening. That's a little bit too subtle for me. So let's play with it. That's a little bit less subtle. Got too much shine on it, so that's going to back right the way down. The hardness is going to come down. Not to 1, however. And I'm going to make this darker overall. And let's see what that looks like. That's better. That's good enough anyway. Now the next thing, obviously, is the shadows. And I'm also going to turn smooth on this surface. You can see these little polygons here. I don't want to see those. So while I've got it selected, I'm going to click here where it says smooth. I'm going to sort out the shadows. I always do these things as I notice them, otherwise you'll find that you tend to forget. And I hate having that hard edge shadow there, so I'm going to turn the soft size up to actually 2. I'm going to turn the samples up to 3 or 4, 5 maybe, and we'll see what difference that makes. And you can see we've got this soft edge shadow, which is a lot better. It's still probably not soft enough, so I'm going to take it up to 3, or something like 3 anyway. That's better. That's much more realistic. So close to, you've got a fairly hard edge. Further away, you've put a soft edge. Now you'll notice the cube at the moment has no material, and I'm going to give that a material now. And where are we? What sort of material shall I give it? Just give it a kind of general sort of marble material, I think. So if we go into texture, ooh, don't want to do that, hang on. Yeah, that's okay, that'll work okay. Right, type, marble. And this is one of the built-in textures for simulating marble. And I know that doesn't look very realistic, but we haven't finished playing with it yet. So you can see there's all these settings down here. And that is probably the most realistic. And you can sharpen it up. And we can make it a kind of a that sort of colour. And for marble, that is actually fairly realistic. So you can see. I'm going to take the colour off-white, make the specular reflections somewhat the same colour. I'm going to ramp up the intensity on that. I'm going to ramp up the hardness to make the material look harder. And I'm going to put a bit of texture on there to do something else, and that is just simply a cloud texture that's not going to affect the colour, so it won't be all pink. It is going to affect the normal, and objects always have like a little bit of variation. That looks okay. Size is probably a bit low. Hard grayscale is probably better. And you can kind of see that it's gone a little bit lumpy, and we don't want to overdo that. I only want it a little bit, but I think that's probably too small, so I'm going to turn it up a little bit. And there you can see, and there you can see the lumpy bumpy bits, as we say. So that's that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cube, I'm going to make it bigger, I'm going to scale it, and then I'm going to apply the scale because otherwise a lot of things don't work, including what I'm going to do next. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that up, and I'm going to use a thing called cell fracture. I can't remember if I've got that turned on by default, so we'll go and have a look. User preferences, add-ons. If I put in there cell, object cell fracture, yes, I have got it enabled. Well, there it is anyway. So I'm going to click on cell fracture. Now there's lots of different things you can do in here, and in fact I want to not do any of them. So I'm going to hit escape, because the first thing I need to do is to put a lot of vertices into this cube, or a particle system. Let me think. Shall I use a particle system? No. Let's do what we've done before. We'll put a lot of vertices in it. So here we go. Subdivide, 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 and there's quite a few vertices, and those are needed because the cell fracture will actually use those as sites to crack the block along. Back into object mode, cell fracture, and you can see own vertices, that's what we're going to use. Source limit 1000. Recursion, we're going to let it recurse once. It's going to be random. Not interested in real-time progress, and click OK. And this takes a little while, and what it's doing is it's splitting that object up into loads of little bits, and it's copying them onto a different layer. Now it does that to save the original. In this case we don't really want to do that, but this is how it works, so we're going to put up with it. I'm going to come back when that's finished, because that's going to take... So here we are again, and you can see we've still got the block there, but we've got a new object in the other layer, a new lot of objects in the other layer. And you can see here we've got all these objects, okay, and they're all irregular shapes, which is exactly what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply physics to those objects, and we're going to add active, I'm not going to change any settings, that's it. And you'll see that this is now a group, and if we were to start the animation right now, you'd see it drop. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our original layer, we're going to get rid of that. That's our original cube, and those objects will have inherited all the material settings, so they're going to be marble. Now with the ground we want to not use, this is the bizarre thing, we don't use collision, rigid body, and it's not active, it's passive, because it's going to stay where it is. Okay, and collisions are like that, bounciness, we'll give it a little tiny bit of bounciness, how's that? Okay, convex hull, which is fine. So there we go. And now what we'll do is we'll go on to that other layer, we'll move all those objects back. Going to hit A for select all, M for move them all, put them on here, and I actually want to deselect the ground, I want to move these up. And now if I press play, it's going to drop, it's going to hit the ground, and oh my gosh. Now that I don't find particularly interesting. What I really want to do is I want to have objects dropping from a height separately. So let me sort this out a bit. Let's go back to the beginning. And you see, here's that cube. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start moving stuff around. How do I do that? Select, random. I'm going to deselect the ground, shift and right mouse. Oops, it's better. I'm going to start moving these around. And at the moment they're all okay, so I can't really do it that way. So let's do this again. select, random. Select random doesn't seem to be working, and that seems to be a bit of a problem. Okay. We seem to have a bug in Blender. This is nothing unusual, so no reason to panic. Let's do this a different way. We will select our box. We're going to move some of these around. Z, one of the most useful things. Shift and deselect the plane at the bottom. There's another way I could do this. I could just move that plane, but then I wouldn't be able to see the size of it, so what the heck. So we've now got it fairly well. We've now got it fairly well split out. And let's go back to our camera view again. I'm going to change our camera view. Let's get to the sort of view I want, which I guess will be about there. View, align view, align that to camera to view, like so. And here we're seeing a bit more than we actually want to. So I'm going to zoom the camera down onto it, and I'm going to do that by selecting the camera, which is way all the way over here. I'm going to bring it down, bring it along, there, view, oops, view camera. That's a bit better. Now I can change the angles of rotation. There we go. And now we can see quite a large area. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. Now what I don't like is the way that this has got too much friction and not enough bounce. So we'll change that. Friction we're going to take down. Bounciness we're going to take up. And we'll run it again and see what happens. Okay, and I think we've still got too much arriving at the same time. So let's box select a whole load of stuff. Move it. Oops. Control Z. and we'll move it up. Try that again. And we'll move this down. So now we've got stuff that's going to arrive at different times. Let's try that. There's really not enough gaps, so let's do that again. Oops, too much selected. Box. And we'll try that one. And very often with these simulations, I've moved the camera now, but very often with these simulations, it is a question of just fiddling around until you get everything right. Something like that. Will do very well. You see now you've got lots of interest in the scene. You've got lots of irregular stuff happening. Things are sliding, things are falling, and what I want to do is I want to just have a few things that scatter in later in the animation. So in order to do that, I'm going to pick objects fairly at random using shift and right mouse button from all of these areas. See, I'm just picking a few out of each one, and I'm going to put those a heck of a lot higher than what's here already. Okay, so I'm going to move those. You can see where these are being moved to. They're being moved right the way up there. So what I've got is I've got a real spread of things that are landing. We'll go back. Here's the simulation again. There's loads and loads of stuff landing. And then we've got a scattered few bits that land afterwards, but they're still landing too early. So I'm going to have to make those even higher. How cool is that? At this rate they're going to be in orbit. So there we go, something like that. View camera. we go, and everything's spreading out and thinning out and doing all those good things. Then whack, and that was quite a whack as well. In fact, I think I'm gonna add even more in now, because I like the way that those came down and thumped in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate those, and way out there, look. So I'm going to go to Tools, I'm going to go to Duplicate, and we've got another set, exactly the same. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push those even further up. I'm going to rotate them slightly just so they look different, they fall differently. Go back to camera view. Now watch. We're going to have incoming meteorites. They're going to be moving pretty fast after they come down from that kind of height. And here's the first lot of impactors. You can see that was a heck of a whack. And that looks to me pretty good. So let's do a quick trial render just to see what the actual image is going to look like. And you can see we've got these quite nicely differentiated stones. Yeah, I quite like that. I quite like that. Now, what we want to do now is we want to play a little bit with the lighting, just to get it to look really cool. And I'm going to find the lamp. Actually, might as well do it the other way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the shadows slightly blue. I'm going to make the lamp more sunlight. I'll turn the energy up to 2. That compensates for it having a colour, really. I'm going to put a real sky in, which means that it's going to start to reflect. Not going to worry about atmosphere. So we'll render image now, see what we get. You can see that looks a bit better. Shadows are still a little bit hard. Mind you, they're very close, so I'm actually going to turn that up even further. That soft size there, I'm going to make that 5. It's very rare that I turn it up larger than 3. We'll try again. So I just don't like hard edge shadows, they look so wrong. I think that's going to do us, you know. So what I'm going to do now is I'll come over, I'm going to render animation, and then I'll come back. I'll show you what it looks like. So here we are, and as a surprise here, I've made a few tiny changes as I did it. And one of the things I did was I put in this large silver ball to smash down right at the end, just for a bit of extra added interest. Now let's just go through the changes I found it necessary to make. Really there's only two. One was I reduced the roughness on the marble, and because I didn't think it looked quite right. So if I hide the render view, you can see that there's the marble texture. Now previously I had it set to something like 0.6 or 0.8 or something. It's now down to 0.282, which gives a much better effect on the cloud texture that went with it. Not of course the marble texture, which doesn't actually have that setting. It's just the cloud texture that I put on there to give it a bit of roughness. The other thing I did was I found the shadows were a little too dark, so I actually added in another lamp down here, and that is pointing in the direction of in the same direction as the camera, and it's a Hemi type lamp. I've set it to a cool colour and a very low density, 0.2. That's just to lighten the shadows up a bit. So if I show you what I mean, if I go somewhere in the middle and hit render image, so that's with that Hemi on. Now if I set that energy to 0, so it's not doing anything, and then render image, you see that what you actually get is shadows that are really almost black. And in the real world, with a sky and everything, you don't actually get that. It's much realistic, much more realistic to have it as you see it there. So let's have a look at the way that the finished animation rendered. Now there's something like 1800 particles in, 1800 pieces of stone in all, plus the actual ball that I made. That's quite a decent effect, I think. Anyhow, that's the tutorial. If I've gone too fast for you, I apologise, but you can always pause it